How would you succinctly describe what the Chinese Communist Party is trying to build?
I think they're trying to build a world that is safe for Chinese hegemony. They're trying to build a world where the rules and norms come out of Beijing, where any major decision has to be referred back to Beijing. And it's the old Middle Kingdom suzerainty type structure, right? The imperial power, which doesn't necessarily have to have colonies. I mean, the West tends to have had a colonial structure, which is very different, where you put in your people in the government. Yeah, they don't need to. Under the imperial model, you don't need to put your people in the government, but that government needs to pay attention to what you say and bring you gifts and say you're so great, that kind of stuff. And so that's what I think what the world they want to look like would be. But I think that embedded in that, and this is this question of ideology, is that what that means is a very hierarchical authoritarian system where the leadership is centralized and in complete control, and that decision making is narrow. So it's not a hegemony that is based on anything except totalitarian control, which is why understanding the ideology is really important, because we kind of know, we talk about Chinese galactic hegemony, as Rick Fisher talks about, because now it's the moon and it's Mars as well. But that hegemony has a very specific structure, and that structure is highly authoritarian. And it has this ethno-nationalist component to it, which justifies that authoritarianism. It's not good.
I'm just imagining Avatar, only if the bad guys were Chinese space forces. Would have been very different.
Wait, which Avatar? Like the blue guys?
The blue ones.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Because again, like this discussion about, we have all of these articles of faith that we're making our analyses based on without actually questioning them in the first place. So what do you guys think a China hegemonic world would look like if they accomplish their goal? What does the world look like?
Well, you're talking about a hegemony by the Chinese Communist Party, right?
That's implicit, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that the Chinese Communist Party, like you pointed out, they want to have this imperialism without colonies, and this idea of loyalty where China controls manufacturing and thereby controls the economy. Every other country is poorer than China, and therefore, to a degree, dependent or even enslaved to the whims of the Chinese Communist Party. And we're already seeing this happen in some African countries, for example. And, they want to see the communities in the Western developed world essentially torn apart. And so that the only source of stability is relying on the Chinese Communist Party.
I mean, I don't have anything to add to what you, Cleo, or you, Matt, said. That seems about right.
I have something to add, which I think is also even more depressing, which is I think they'll end up also essentially exporting their censorship, not through actually controlling the internet the way that they do in China with the firewall and stuff like that, but just through, I think they're already kind of doing it, making companies afraid of crossing China or angering China in order to do business, making Chinese people in other countries afraid of talking about the Chinese Communist Party, Chinese people in Australia, Chinese people in America, threatening their families, threatening, you're a Uyghur who's made it to Turkey. Maybe Turkey's going to send you back to China. And I think that that's kind of already happening on a low scale. Like, it's not like widespread. Mostly they target people they think are troublemakers. But I think that, like, if the Chinese Communist Party, they become the global hegemon, then that will just be the way of life in most countries, where you're so dependent on China economically. You're so dependent on them, in terms of like the political leaders are afraid to say something. Like they're able to,
Because China could sanction them.
you are able to, they're kind of able to export that type of like censorship and authoritarian control through their spy networks, through like all this kind of stuff. And it'll just be very like not official. Like it won't be implemented through governments. It'll be implemented through kind of like these societal mechanisms.
And I think one, type of thing we might see is, Facebook has tried to get into China for many years. And I think they've backed off a little bit recently, which is good because I can imagine a world where the Communist Party lets Facebook in, lets them kind of, make money and establish their roots in China for a while, and then says, okay, now to continue to operate in China, you have to censor speech not only in China, but also all around the world, any speech that slanders China. And you can legally do this because Facebook, you are a private company, and therefore you have free speech in the United States or in Canada and other free countries. And your right as a company is to control what's on your platform. And so I think that's just a practical, idea of what we'd see. And we are seeing, some level of censorship, let's call it, against certain voices on Facebook and YouTube and other platforms, but it's not to the scale that it could be if...
Didn't it come out that a Facebook fact checker had ties to some Chinese company?
This sounds like an episode of Wait, is that true?
It was not really that. Like, it's kind of also like they tried to say that like Facebook employed some Chinese people. Like
they did?
Yeah, kind of like these first generation Chinese people who had previously worked for, Chinese companies like Chinese tech companies that had participated in censorship in China. But like, that's like, several degrees of separation between saying that and being able to say, well, that proves that Facebook is implementing censorship techniques from China.
I just want to say I'm comfortable working with ethnically Chinese people.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think, Shelley, you kind of put your finger on one of the things that I'm particularly worried about, which is what happens inside our heads, right? Like this sort of imperialism, or however you want to put it, doesn't stop in the physical world. The goal is really to control thought. And we saw it with, when the Australian, I think it was the embassy, Chinese embassy in Australia, put out a list of things that Australia should or shouldn't do, right? Or what their government should or shouldn't do. And we're starting to see it kind of almost implemented, the self-censorship implemented. The Halifax Security Forum wanted to give an award this year to President Tsai of Taiwan. And the Canadian government said, we're going to pull our funding to the Halifax Security Forum if you do it. Right. So that self-censorship is happening right now at the national level. But I am particularly concerned about heading into a world where, like in China, there are a lot of things you're not allowed to say or think, really. If they know that you're thinking it, you've got a problem. That's the national security law in Hong Kong, right? Like and the reach is global. I think this is one of the things that needs to be made explicit. This is not a battle for territory. This is a battle for ideology, for minds, for what you believe in as an individual and as a nation. Like, this is really, really fundamental. And we can't ignore it. We need to call it out. This is a whole different way of structuring human interactions, organizations, not just economies, not just borders, not just an island in the South China Sea. No, I think the goal of the Chinese Communist Party is to get into your mind and help you determine what you're allowed to think and not allowed to think. So this is pretty serious, and it has to be countered. You can't let it stand.